Um, but before I get kick-started, we are at week 8 of the program, and I'm just going to take this time to give everyone a round of applause virtually, because getting to the pitching stage is no easy feat. Coming along this journey of starting off with sort of a challenge and trying to understand that challenge and going through the process that you have gone through is a lot harder than it looks. So before we even get to pitch training, you guys, congratulations, because it's definitely not an easy task. And I hope that you guys have gathered or learned a lot from this experience. So we are now at pitch practice. So the next workshop will be influencing change. And from a workshop perspective, that's where it ends. Before you guys enter your dry run and your virtual showcase. We'll be giving you guys a bit more detail as to what the influencing change workshop entails a bit later. But to get us started with today's workshop, we have your 2 pitching coaches that are in the room today. We have Adam and Mateen. And just before we get kick-started into you guys and how this is going to work today, I thought I might give it the opportunity for our coaches to introduce themselves. So I might hand over to Mateen first, and then Adam, if that's all right, Mateen.
Thanks, Radhika. Hi, everyone. Pleasure to meet you, and I'm super excited to hear all of your pitches. I don't bite. I'm looking very forward to hearing them and listening to them and seeing what feedback that we can provide you to further sharpen them and get them even more amazing than I'm sure they am today. So a bit of a background. My name is Mateen. I'm the Human-Centered Design Lead with GHD Digital. So my background does span a little bit in a lot of the activities that you would have done to go through your pitch. So a lot of the empathy, understanding the problems, really tacking on and figuring out what is the design challenge that you're figuring for, and then building out solutions to that. Other backgrounds in my area is around strategy, transformation, and innovation management. So a little bit across the spots that you'll be working in today. So not my first rodeo in doing stuff like this, and I'm really keen to give you some good feedback. But I'll throw it off to Adam, which, by the way, nice to meet you too, mate.
G'day. Hi, everyone. Thanks for allowing us to be part of this awesome experience. I did a brief introduction a few weeks ago now at the prior one. In terms of this experience, really, really keen to see how you managed to distill so many insights and learnings and, wrong turns or hypotheses that you've decided to just dismiss, and how you managed to distill that into a really worthwhile pitch. The experience I'll draw on for that is I spent 5 years in PwC as a consultant and got to work with some really effective presenters and people who were able to win business, so to speak, by creating a compelling story to help convince clients that we are the best suited to address their needs and understand exactly what they needed to do. So we're drawing on sort of the awesome people I got to work with through that experience to see how we can take the awesome work you've done and just provide a bit of feedback from here on in.
Thank you so much, guys. So to answer some of the questions in the room as to how today will work, just bear with me one moment. My PowerPoint is freezing. So today's workshop will work as follows. We won't have any breakouts for the pitches today. Everyone will be pitching in this main room, the plenary room. And how it's going to work is the team that is pitching will be the team that has their cameras on. And respectfully, just to make it a bit comfortable for everyone, if everyone that's not presenting, they wouldn't mind turning their cameras off so the judges know who the team is and they can sort of present accordingly. So this is the order of the pitch teams that will go first. So we have climate resilience going first, affordable housing second, post-pandemic communities third, voices of communities fourth, and finishing off with sustainable place, just so you guys know the order. And the way, or a general outline of how this pitch will work is you guys will come up and present. You'll have 30 seconds to introduce who you guys are within the team. Your pitch will go for a total of 2 minutes. And as I mentioned in the email I sent to you guys, it is not necessary to have a visual aid or a presentation deck with your pitch today. If you wish to talk to your mural storyboard, that is completely fine, but your pitch will go for a total of 2 minutes, and we have Laura recording for you guys. It will be followed by a short Q&A session with the pitch coaches, where they will ask you a series of questions, and this gives you the opportunity to also ask questions to the coaches. And then you guys will receive your feedback from the coaches on how to improve or where are opportunities for you guys to grow and stretch your pitch. The easiest way to capture this feedback is you'll see on your mural boards for this week the rosebud and thorn canvas that you guys used a couple of weeks back. As you're receiving feedback, if one of you would like to enter your feedback into that, so it's just easy to categorize and for you guys to go back on after this workshop, that is there for you guys to use. You'll also get some time after the judges have left today to sort of go through the feedback and start to iterate your pitch accordingly. Before I move on, does anyone have any questions, or does that all make sense so far? I will take silence as a yes. So some tips for pitching before we go straight into it with climate resilience is practice makes permanent. So post this workshop, the more you practice, the more easier it's going to be. I know in the past when I've been in places where I've needed to pitch, they're just like, keep trying. There's no stupid run. You know, the more you do it, the easier it will be. Your PowerPoint deck, if you decide to use one for the end showcase, is simply a visual aid. It doesn't change the story. It isn't your story. Like you are you guys are the storytellers in this pitch. So you guys are the vessels that carry the story. So try not to rely too heavily on your PowerPoint slides. A good pitch is a good story, as I said previously. It's all about how you tell a narrative. Yes, this process has involved a lot of information and a lot of data, but how are you going to take your audience on the journey of where you started to where you are now and weave that information into a compelling narrative? Remember to pause. So, you know, it is 2 minutes, but remember that you don't want to be on screen bulleting through your presentation for 2 minutes straight. There is power in pausing. So remember to do that. And when you do end up pitching, and even in your pitch training, remember that physical and mental rest is equally as important as practicing. And so you want to ensure that, you know, you're in your best state, both emotionally and physically, to enable you to pitch at your best. So that will be all from me for this part of the session. I might hand it over to the climate resilience team to then share their screens if you guys would like to, and we can get the pitch process started. I would request everyone that's not presenting at the moment to please turn their cameras off if that's okay. And I will hand it over to Team Climate Resilience.
Sorry, Rads, just to interrupt. I'm going to give warnings for when you're halfway through your 1 minute and when the 2 minutes are up. So I'll just hold up a 1 for 1 minute and 2 for 2 minutes. If you just want to keep an eye on that, just so you've got an idea of how long you are taking as well.
Thanks, Laura. Take it away.
Thanks, everyone. I actually don't have anything to show on the screen at the moment, so if that's okay, I'll just talk to our pitch. So before I lead into it, our introduction is that we're a team of 4 professionals with backgrounds in chemical and environmental engineering, project coordination and property development, with a deep understanding of the interdependencies of critical infrastructure systems. So our challenge question was around climate resilience for population growth and livability. And more specifically, how might we articulate the interdependencies between critical infrastructure systems so that communities can understand, anticipate, and reduce the impact when climate shock occurs? Sorry, bear with me, a little bit unprepared for this one. But we, in reviewing the question, The issue of climate resilience is such a broad question that we weren't able to answer it within the bounds of this program. So we felt that the first step on the journey to climate resilience was everyday resilience, how resilient we are in an everyday situation. So here we go. So the screen would show climate change, and we'd lead into it by saying, after more than 10,000 years of relative stability, the Earth's climate is changing. Climate change can be defined as a change in the pattern of weather and related changes in oceans, land surfaces, and ice sheets occurring over timescales of decades or longer. In Australia, we've seen how floods, fires, and heat waves have impacted people's livelihoods. People lose their houses, their pets, their family members. They also lose their jobs when they can no longer get to work. And even when they don't lose their homes, they can lose power to their homes for days or weeks. How do you charge your phone? Without your phone or internet or TV, how do you stay connected to those who you love? How do you let your family know that you're okay in a climate shock event? Business risks are significant too. In a recent survey, 95% of Australian executives surveyed say their companies have already been impacted by climate change. A spokesperson from the RBA states that climate change is a first order risk for the financial system. Climate shock events happen without notice. Maintaining key infrastructure systems such as power, water, and road access is essential to being prepared to survive a climate shock event and to ensure the community is able to recover quickly. We all need to be prepared, but how do we measure preparedness or climate resilience? Before we can plan for climate resilience, we need to understand how resilient we are in a normal or everyday situation. Our research found that while some organisations are already measuring and planning for climate resilience, there's no benchmarking tool to provide a baseline, and the plans don't link to one another. For a community to be prepared to withstand a climate shock event, local government, businesses, emergency services, utilities, and infrastructure companies and community members all need to understand each member's scope of responsibility and be working together to a cohesive plan. Without a benchmark, how do you measure your resilience against best practice? Without connectivity, how do you assess the robustness of the overarching community plan? Our solution is to create a tool to provide a clear benchmark.
That's 2 minutes. Keep going though, but that is 2 minutes, just to give you an idea of time.
Thanks. Our solution is to create a tool to provide a clear benchmark for all infrastructure organisations to better prepare for climate shock events and improve the resilience of critical infrastructure systems for the benefit of those organisations, industry, and the community. It's designed to create connectivity and improve the consistency of climate resilience plans across infrastructure providers using a fair set of questions that are widely applicable. Partnering with the Green Building Council of Australia and neighbours, we will access the resilience-related responses from those tools to pre-fill questions within our climate resilience tool and leverage off their market penetration to drive uptake of the tool within industry. Our team includes professionals with backgrounds in chemical and environmental engineering, project coordination, and property development with a deep understanding of the interdependencies of critical infrastructure systems. Going forward, we're looking to grow into a panel of experts and partner with a steering committee who are supporting the existing design and operation rating tools. The roadmap to success looks like Horizon 1, 6 months, our pitch, further detailed research, and partner with a steering committee, including members from the Green Building Council, neighbours, and Infrastructure Australia. Horizon 2, 1 year, develop draft rating tool questions and format. Horizon 3, 18 months, pilot with local government and developers, starting with those communities recently impacted by floods and bushfires. Horizon 4, 2 years plus, refine and assign formal certification for climate resilience rating system for member use. Create a platform for guidance and information sharing between member organisations to leverage off key learnings and experience. We ask for your commitment of funding and resources in taking an active role in the steering committee and in take-up of the tool when launched. That's where we are. Thank you.
Great job, guys. Amazing work. I will leave it to our judges to now provide their feedback and questions.
Thanks, Adam. Thank you very much for your pitch. It was a lot to get through in 2 minutes, so well done. I'll skip through the normal stuff around visual aids and presentations because I know you're already on top of that once you go into your actual pitch, so I'll put that to the side. I think the key thing for me listening to your pitch was, I think where you could tighten it is you talked a lot about trying to contextualize the problem of climate change, and you talked a lot about trying to then further go down and saying, look, climate change is a problem. There are a lot of risks, and in terms of how do we measure preparedness. And I think you can boil all of that down into a few seconds and start going, hey, we know climate change is a very real thing. We know that businesses and communities are going to be impacted in a huge climate risk event. And then therefore, your initial thing is going to be, but how do we ensure that we are all prepared in the same way? And I think that's the key part of your pitch here, is how do all of these agencies coordinate in a way that we can respond to a climate risk event quickly and also measure our response to it? And I think you can truncate a lot of your pitch to do that. And then the second part is, I heard in terms of your solutions, when you say a tool for clear benchmarking of all organizations, what you could probably hit a bit better is, what are the clear benefits of this benchmarking? And there are going to be a lot of them, but if you can sort of narrow down to say the top 3 of these benchmarkings are going to be how we create better connectivity to ensure that people and businesses are safe and all of that. So I think there's a first part around how you contextualize it. What is your solution, this benchmarking tool? But when you just say a benchmarking tool, I'm still a bit fuzzy about what that looks and feels like. So the way you articulate the benefits from that's important. Your roadmap to me feels a little bit less important as space for your pitch, because those are your next steps. But I think what would be really critical in that part of that is saying, what is the first tangible thing and the first thing that you can perceive your solution delivering? And that becomes the first drop-off point. But those would be the main ones for me. Adam, anything from you?
First up, thanks so much for sharing. That was really good, a great insight. And as I kind of said in the intro, I appreciate the challenge of distilling a whole bunch of research and interviews into a brief pitch. Also, Laura, feel free to use the bell for us as well as needed.
Yes,
because we're super keen to hear from pitch 2, 3, 4, and 5, as well as give feedback to pitch 1 as we go along. My feedback can be pretty quick. The notes I've taken, I think Mateen might be able to see my screen or something. That crispness of the problem space, I think you have to assume that it's understood. And if you are going to do a story there just to bring the problem home, then try to choose a really clear thread for that story. I felt there was a big change from letting your family know you're okay to the insight about 95% of the execs needing a climate change strategy. So if you are going to choose something to really hammer the problem home, then just go all in and pick one and say, here's one example of how we know it's a problem, or how we know it's a problem that we're not sure how to solve. Anything you can do to change that word of tool to make it more specific. Because otherwise I was using hints to try and see what that tool is. You say a fair set of questions. So I'm like, okay, so it's some sort of survey thing. Or so the more that you can make it really clear as to what the tool is. And similarly, as I go through that, keep an ear out for your own buzzwords to figure out what the real English is for it. Because I heard like leverage to increase uptake. That sounds fantastic. It means you've got relationships to make sure that this is successful. But try and find real words to really bring that home, instead of kind of falling back onto that sort of, those are all kind of buzzish words of leveraging and increasing uptake. If there's anything you can paint around that benchmark, again, if you haven't gotten there, that's okay. But if you have like those hero dimensions of the benchmarking would be A, B, C, then that can really paint a better idea of what that benchmarking is, because then that links to what Mateen was talking about of the overall solution, because if it says it's about connectivity or how you're measuring the impact to your or whatever those dimensions are, if you do have an idea of the key themes, then that can be really worthwhile. And the other thing is, if you do have an ask at the end, then being more specific as much as you can makes a big difference. And if it's not funding right now, or it's just a small round of funding to get to the next stage, that makes sense. But maybe we're not there yet. But if you do have an ask, then put it down really clear as to what that is. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. For the advice I was given, I think it was really good. And I think when we come to actually making the visual aids, stuff will be a lot clearer. For example, the tool that we're going to use, we can present it in a way where we can visualize like the assessment piece that we will actually be giving to these infrastructure organizations. Somehow I was watching practice videos of like pitches from previous smart seeds, and someone even put like an exemplar certificate of something that they wanted. That was their solution. And I thought that was really smart. So I was thinking maybe we could also do similar.
Yeah, a gentle steer on that is when it comes down to a solution, people don't buy the assessment, they buy the thing the assessment allows them to do.
Yeah.
So yes, working out what your assessment allows them to achieve based on that would be a good way to anchor your solution.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I think one part I heard Mateen to that was the idea of accreditation. And that's one really simple outcome. The other one, which I would assume is it allows you to kind of prioritize where your biggest gap or opportunity might be for addressing your organization's resilience. But that was something I already heard in the pitch that talked about the potential benefits, where you're talking about in the horizons of getting accreditation for climate resilience.
Wonderful. It's not easy going first off. So incredible work, climate resilience. It's always no one likes jumping up on stage first, so claps for you guys. If there are no more further questions or feedbacks, we might move on to affordable housing if there are no more questions, guys. I'll take silence as a no. And so affordable housing. Thanks so much, Climate Resilience. Affordable housing, you're up next.
We're here. Hold on.
Lovely. The floor is now yours.
Okay, cool. So I think we'll just introduce ourselves separately. So I'm Effie Warren. I work at Bridge Housing, which is a community housing provider. Then we've got Catherine.
I'm Catherine Curtin, design manager for Stockland.
Steve Collins, strategic design engineer at Orange City Council.
Oh, you're on mute.
Bronte Ingram, sorry, and I'm a graduate at GHD.
Okay, cool. So I'll just start off with our question, which is making affordable housing accessible for future generations. How might we reconsider financial urban planning or other mechanisms for future generations that increase accessibility to and provide confidence in housing affordability? Obviously, affordable housing is such a big topic, so we really honed in on one cohort, and that was being youth.
Did you want me to share?
Yeah, can you share?
Do I
Sorry,
share it?
Yeah.
I'll share.
Thanks. There we
Can
go.
you see that? Can people
Yeah.
see that?
Yeah, so we honed in on youth. In Australia, 9,000 youths age out of care each year, and nearly half of them will end up in homelessness. 27,500 homeless between the age of 12 to 24 years of age. 2 in 5 people experiencing homelessness are young people. And of the homeless youth, 34% aged out of care. And could you imagine yourself or your child, grandchild having to juggle all of this at 16? So we really wanted to hone in on the youth.
So we've titled our project the Hugo Project. So it really aims to provide youth aging out of foster care with the necessary housing, skills, and support to assist them as they transition into adulthood. We use diverse partnering to provide a solution with social and financial benefits to multifacets of the community and provides government savings and social enterprise.
Yeah, so the Hugo project is a multi-organisational partnership, effectively connecting landowners, developers, housing providers, and service networks to offer and combine resources. Broadly speaking, the approach is to connect these companies, identify potential land, selecting a cohort. In this case, we're focusing on the youths, and then deliver the project, and then evaluate, assess benefits, and reassess. The roadmap, so for this, we're effectively a flow chart. Step 1 is seek the multi-organisational partnerships. Step 2 is find the land opportunities, whether it's land bank, institutions with available land, churches, etc. Effectively land that is otherwise vacant or waiting to be developed. Step 3 is a business case, so identifying appropriate cohorts and services. 4 is seek funding and approvals, so that's funding, whether private or other, and approvals through local government, state government. 5, delivering a collection of transportable tiny homes to provide youth access to housing, and at the same time also providing key services to enable their independence and agency, life skills, career, budgeting, education and employment. And then step 6, evaluate benefits to the youth and the community.
So the impacts of this project are multifold, but of course the main impact is to the young people that we are supporting. With the project, we're able to foster independence and confidence in these at-risk youths so that they are better prepared for adulthood. In doing so, our project has the potential to save the government up to $400 million over 10 years, as the project is able to tackle the cost of homelessness, unemployment, substance abuse, and hospitalization. In terms of scalability, the need for housing is universal, so this model can be applied to any geographic location and targeted cohort.
So we come from a range of organizations and professions, from developer, landowner, designer, engineer, community housing provider, and government. And we strongly believe that this is a cause that is worthwhile, that can be resolved.
Everyone here today has the value to add to this conversation. We ask that you tap into your cohort, network, and partners so that we can turn the model into actuality. Any questions?
Mateen, did you have any questions for clarification? Others?
One, I guess. So could you run me through? I see two parts of the pitch. One is the network and the other one is the tiny homes. Mm-hmm. Could you talk me through the tiny homes a bit more? And where that came from in the scope of your solution?
Yeah, sure. So I think the network is kind of around, so our idea is the tiny homes on land banks, but obviously there would have to be a lot of network to get that up and running. So we'd have to find land banks, would have to find a developer who can build the tiny homes, and then a community housing provider to manage the properties.
Got you. I think my question also comes from, how do we know that the tiny homes are the right solution?
That's a good question. When we were considering the tiny homes, we were thinking about different cohorts that it would work for. And the reason youth came out was because hopefully it's not a long-term solution. So, you know, they might come out of them after 2-3 years. And it's, you know, they don't have a family, I guess, where they need a bigger space.
Gotcha. Thanks. I think I'll touch on that tiny home point again in my feedback, but I think that's the questions that I have for now. You, Adam?
Yeah, I think most of my questions can be reframed as feedback, so I'll just jump into it. I had the same realization. I feel like the tiny home, it felt like it was kind of buried into a step 5, when actually it really is the heart or one key component of your solution, as I understand. So find the vacant land, bring the tiny home. I would try to reframe the pitch to bring that to the fore, because that then helps me. The next question I have is, okay, this has complexity and risk. So I'd love to see how the partnerships that you have curated or proposed help address that. Because that's what will make this magic is, okay, we realize that let's say it needs funding, it needs some sort of infrastructure, there needs to be some sort of risk management, whatever the first problems are that come to people's minds. And this is the partnership that we believe will make that, versus just a partnership, which is great. And it combines resources to connect companies, really showing how these organizations would help bring that to solve this specific problem. The other part which I've heard in there, I think it's really good to see you say, okay, it's a big problem, let's focus on youth. I doubt anyone would challenge your rationale for that. So you can, the stats were fantastic, but just you can make that really short. You've got our full support there. But also, you know, there's systemic benefits too, because if you can stop homelessness at the youth stage, then hopefully you'll avoid older people's homelessness, because those people have, you know, you've redirected those people. So I'll de-emphasize what I heard was kind of the flexibility to solve all problems. Like, yes, this can extend to domestic violence people, and that's fantastic, but I'd rather show how well it's addressing, you know, one already significant problem, and how we've thought that solving comprehensively that one use case, then trying to show, yes, and it can do everything else as well. Because I think, yeah, there's real merit in really selling the value of this solution for this problem, and trying to show that it can also scale and extend beyond that. Love the kind of IKEA feeling name for it. I thought it was really cool. And other than that, from a delivery point of view, I challenge the need, like it feels like a group assignment if you feel everyone has to talk together, but that said, you did it really smoothly. So I'll generally challenge, do you need to do that? I felt that each of you spoke really well, presented your part really well, so that was fine, but I'll just say, don't feel compelled that everyone has to speak. If you find that delivers a message well, in this case it was smooth, then go for it. And thanks for sharing. That's it from me.
Thanks, Adam. I agree with all of that. I think I can't overstate the look and feel of just having a project name, right? The Hugger project. It's fantastic. I think just from being able to show that you've established a well thought out solution. Now, the key feedback I have is when I was listening, first of all, fantastic job, well done, again, for all of you. When I was going through thinking about the solution, I wasn't sure if your solution was developing the partnership model, or I wasn't sure if your solution was tiny homes, right? And then I think that's the clarity you need to try and figure out, where am I building a tiny home and then trying to figure out what's the best network of people that need to come together for me to be able to place it and help? Or am I building this network of collaborators where we will try and tackle the challenges of youth homelessness, through which a tiny home is a potential solution. And so the tiny home becomes less important over there. Because the solution could be anything and everything once you identify the right people to focus on the challenge. The question I have in my head is, has this been done today? What sucks about it? And so why are we giving this a swing? Why is the Hugger project going to be better than whatever we have in place today? So I really like the way you articulated the opportunity statement, where it's going to be, look, 40% of homelessness right now affects youth. With solving this problem can help us, you know, save the government or generate up to $400 million in benefits. I think that's fantastic. Next, I think there has to be a little bit of an acknowledgement of, there are two approaches to helping homelessness. One is the housing first approach, and the other one is the capabilities or skills first approach, right? Do I get a person a job and look after them, which then leads to housing? Or the other approach is you look after housing, and when they're secure, then they can find better jobs, outcomes, and opportunities. And I think saying that you are taking a housing first approach so that the rest of the stuff will come is going to be quite important to your pitch. And then it's going to be working out how you're going to help them do that. Is it the network that you form as a super group that helps solve challenges, or is it that tiny homes piece? Building onto Adam's feedback from the earlier pitch as well, using a persona. this is person X. They're affected by homelessness. These are the key problems. This is the journey that they will face, or problems they'll face. Always helps bring a face to the problem, and especially in issues such as homelessness, the persona can drive a better connection to the issues that you're trying to solve. The other one, that's about it. I think more in terms of the interesting thing for me is finding these partnerships, or saying that, hey, here are a bunch of partners we want to work with, is the easy part. How do you actually, what is the steps that you would go through to build this network would be the very interesting thing for me in this pitch, if that's the way you go down. But no, that's it from my end. Well done, all of you. It's a really good pitch.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. We'll now move on to post-pandemic communities.
Hey guys, how you going? We'll just introduce ourselves really quickly as well before we get on to our pitch. My name's Vinny. I'm a project manager for Department of Infrastructure and Transport.
And my name's Brody. I'm an innovation consultant here at GHD.
My name's Isaac. I'm a graduate architect as well at GHD.
And my name's Hayley. I'm an environmental scientist for McConnell Dowell.
Cool. I'll get us started, guys. So our challenge was, how might we leverage community spirit and learnings from being local that emerged through the COVID-19 pandemic so that communities can sustain their own diverse, thriving and viable networks? So we decided to call ourselves the Virtual Grandchild, and I will explain why. The existing problem is that digital inclusion in the elderly population has consistently shown to be a tough issue to tackle, with low levels of digital literacy and a lack of willingness and ability to adapt to modern technologies. Since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, this issue has been exacerbated by the inaccessibility of technology and online digital spaces, leading to feelings of isolation and exclusion, particularly in the elderly population. Our new problem then becomes that, in particular, our research showed that despite considerable government spending on digital inclusion initiatives, the digital uptake in the elderly population remains quite low for a number of reasons. One such factor is that a lack of education and training, combined with a lack of exposure to the physical tech resources themselves, leads them feeling left out. I'll hand over to Vinny to talk about who we spoke to.
So we interviewed members of several different communities, including education, construction, government, and the elderly, asking them how the pandemic shifted their perception and what changes they had to make to adapt to the new working environment and stay in touch. Based on the interview, we have noticed elderly communities were severely disadvantaged, struggling to keep up with the practicality of the rapid transition to an online and lockdown world. We knew that we had a widespread issue to tackle and to bring about a change for those that needed it the most. So naturally, our focus is on how do we leverage elderly community spirit to ensure that communities as a whole remain viable in similar situations going forward. I'll pass on to Isaac to hear about our solution.
Yeah, so the Virtual Grandchild is a solution we envisaged. It's a digital access tool providing immediate assistance and more direct communication to the elderly population, including essential services, family connectivity, and technical guidance. The Virtual Grandchild is a government-funded initiative providing each person over the age of 60 with a phone with a simplified point of access. The person can call or text this hotline and receive a URL link. Now, to explain how that works, I'll just run through how we envision it working as myself being an old person. The idea would be I'd see an ad or this number on the TV, and I think I need to get the medicine that I'm after, and I cannot go out to do it. I'd call this hotline. The first time I run through this hotline, I'd explain what I'm after, and this chemist I usually go to. They would have this hotline would have access to that information, look it up for me online, and simply text me a link. I'd click on that link, and the first time I use this hotline, they'd guide me through the steps I need to take to order the medicine I want to do. Over time, we envisage in this conversation almost training and becoming more and more independent of this conversation. The next time they call, they don't need as much guidance through this situation. They just click the link and then the person's still there. Maybe the third or fourth time they call, they can simply click the link and they know exactly what they need to do. And this idea comes through of providing independent agency over time. And the reason we think this is the correct solution is because it suits the methods that elderly people already use. So with that, I would just like to, thank you. And are there any questions?
What happens after they click the link?
So it takes them to a website that they're like a sort of established website. And the idea would be this would be almost like tech support guiding them through, you go here to click and order the things you're after, or that could already be placed into the cart for them. And then they go through and input their information and check out. We also envisioned it using through news alerts, community events, or even calling their grandchildren via like Skype or Zoom. But this link is sort of set up for them to get that initial contact and then develop agency from there.
I think just as an example, if you were to call, let's say, your grandchild, and someone calls the number to say, "Can you call my grandchild for me?" We just give them we provide this link, and when they access the link, they don't have to press a call button. They don't have to do anything. It just automatically opens up the video for them to talk to their grandchild, if that makes sense.
It removes the need for input, in other words.
Yep.
I like it. A digital PA for the elderly.
Yeah.
Could you immediately roll this out to my dad?
With the right funding, yes.
Yeah.
Have you given any thought to, I know it's just we are pitching and we're just saying government funding, but have you given any thought to what that funding would look like?
Yes, so in our research phase, there is already a large lot of government funding that goes towards digital access digital access for elderly communities. And it'd be taking a lot of this funding that the government already uses and redirecting it into this system, because we've found a lot of those methods were not correct or didn't provide that level of training, or it didn't fit the methods that elderly people already use to roll out on those sort of large scales.
Any questions from you, Adam?
I'm not sure how much I'm just, how do you say, projecting onto that solution. If the link triggers a call, that's great. If it triggers a transaction, then we need payment details and things like that. Are we assuming that it's multi-device, or that they know how to enter payment details? Like, if I understand your premise, that's kind of like training wheels, and slowly they'll have less and less need for their digital agent because they feel more comfortable with those processes. But if you imagine the first high care situation, at what point in time would they be kind of left to their own to figure out how to pay for that medicine, or how to log the Medicare claim to get the rebate for that?
So that's been something we've discussed internally a bit, and this is where we're still trying to nut out a few of those details of, is this more like your family member has set up and put that information in there for you at one point already, or is this more the traditional 2-point like factor authentication, that system? And that's something we're still working out, like internally, of how that actually works.
Yep, just building at that point as well. It's I think it's a really, really good solution, but then that poses a lot more questions that we need to work through. So I think to Adam's point, part of this also comes down to the whole data privacy aspect, how you would structure this solution. A lot of your services being delivered here at the call center somewhere else that help people, whatever, right? But I think there's a big part of this that the elderly are already a subset of our population that are highly vulnerable to scams and are highly vulnerable to stuff like this. So how do you ensure, no answer here, but how do you ensure you build a solution that gives people peace of mind and that also tries to protect them from stuff like that? Because opening up things like click a link, somebody helps me, but they get my card details, that sounds very, very dangerous when we start moving into that. They're the most vulnerable community for stuff like this.
That's a very good point.
All right, in terms of feedback, I'll kick us off first. I think very, very well delivered and sharp pitch. I like the very clear articulation of your problem statement. Although I think that there's a little bit of work you can do around sharpening the how might we, because when you're talking about community spirit, sustained, diverse, thriving networks, great, virtual grandchild, where did that jump come from, right? And so I think that there's a bit of sharpening that you can do in the initial part of your pitch around how do you link your how might we down to that. The one thing that I couldn't work out in my head was we said that COVID made digital adoption more difficult, or it made the inaccessibility for tech a little bit more challenging for the elderly, because I'm assuming everything was suddenly becoming more and more digital, but they couldn't keep up, right? And so we're saying that the elderly couldn't keep up at the same pace of the skyrocketing digital adoption or the digital maturity stuff that was growing during COVID. So I think sharpening that messaging, because to me, it felt like, oh, shouldn't they also be getting better at digital? Because if the environment is one where more stuff is happening, like I know like very rough connection that should make no sense, but like my family, the older ones got a lot better at FaceTime and blah during COVID and pandemic times. So the question is, why are the elderly groups not catching up or keeping up as fast as the increasing digital adoption that COVID had put in? And I think you touched on it, right? But that lack of education, training, exposure, but keep making it clear that the elderly just couldn't keep up fast enough with all of this stuff that was digitizing. I really like the fact that you interviewed a lot of them to get their feedback and things like that. Love the virtual grandchild idea. And I think, yeah, just touching on that more of that solution aspect around when you're talking about calling a hotline, smashing a link, my head immediately went back to, oh, if I'm elderly and I'm clicking a link, I'm still going back to the same problem. So calling out the fact that there is that support person that walks them through the link, how they use it, and really does babysit them throughout, that would be a bit more helpful. But that was it for me. Over to you, Adam.
Thanks. Really good, really smooth. Totally agree with, I could see the logic, but if you could just compress that first part to really get to, okay, yep, we don't want to leave, as we transfer to a more digital environment, we just don't want to leave these people behind. And that then really helps with the information you gave us. I think it was Vinny, in terms of they felt they were left behind. So using that to really accelerate how you get to that problem that you want to solve first. The other thing in terms of delivery, you talked about, imagining this scenario, turn it into a scenario, tell us a story, talk about use your grandma's name and the medicine script that she has to get filled and finds out that she's not allowed to go out, and so she calls it, because that'll help you kind of using slightly abstract phrasing, because you're not talking about yourself, you're talking about a potential third party, whereas you just turn into a story of, Jen calls the hotline, is told this, is sent a link, clicks on that. It really paints a picture really quickly and helps us all identify with it. If you are looking into a proposal, it wouldn't hurt to try to talk through that execution side, even if you're only in a first idea, just of, are we talking about a manned hotline? Are we training up and equipping staff? To what degree is AI involved or not? So that when you are seeking funding, what's the heart of that funding? Is it setting up a whole new call center department? Is it establishing a new set of technology infrastructure? And similar to that, considering the two factors of the solution. One is really honing on that trust side, so that anything you are sent through here is legit. And that's where we're investing a lot of effort to make sure that you're sent to the right place, so that if they have an issue, they call up the virtual grandchild, like my mum calls me up saying, I got this link, should I click it or not? I've been told I owe money for this, is that correct or not? And then just the view of breadth versus depth for how you're tackling this. So is it the breadth of, it could be both, but are you solving a breadth of problems for them, or is it really an end-to-end concierge for one? As an example, government services, are you helping them navigate the broad range of government services available as one potential area or not? Because that's, a simple option for digital inclusion, that they get their whichever benefits and things like that they're entitled to, or they know how to log, again, their healthcare rebate or something like that. I think the good sign is the fact that we're asking these questions means you've given us some view of a solution. We're really keen to see what the next step and the next step is. So that I'd take that as a really positive sign, because we can see that. We could imagine our grandparents or someone calling up and getting advice, and that's why we're asking those sort of details to understand, okay, where's the real value and how will it be measured? Thanks.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Really interesting. I will now move on to Voices of Communities. The floor is now yours.
Hello, everyone. We are Voices of the Community, consisting of 5 individuals who are obsessed with community engagement excellence with professional backgrounds in people and culture, data, energy, innovation, and government. Our team consists of Amanda from Orange City Council, Jack from the South Australian Department for Infrastructure and Transport, Jacob from Stockland, Crystal from GHT, and myself, Poonama, from Sydney Water.
Our endeavour to include all voices of the community in developments began with researching the pain points for youth in contributing to these engagements. As members of the group ourselves, the research reflected how we felt, that the youth are passionate about their community but do not know how to easily contribute nor find the time to contribute. Our solution tackles this pain point using a safe asset which has a known engagement with the youth community. So our pitch video will explain the solution further. The first scene for the pitch video will be a picture of the community and a voiceover. So the voiceover will say, if you love your community, but think not all voices are being heard in the creation of safe public spaces and places. If you can't find the time to contribute wholeheartedly as you'd like, ComNext is the solution for you.
The next scene has a member of the community. I saw Connect app on Instagram one day. Once I signed up, I got a notification on my phone when there was a proposed change to a park near my house. It was so easy to provide some feedback and ideas. When the opportunity also opened up for a facilitated online community chat about the project, I signed up as well. This meeting included a range of different people from our community at a time that suited me in the comfort of my own house. I've never felt so passionate and excited about what's happening in our community. I feel like the power to make a real difference. Connect is transparent in how it will use my data and allows me to have the power to decide when and how my name and demographic data is shared publicly or to councils. By contributing to the community chat, I also gained 50 engagement points, and I contributed to more chats and surveys. I'll earn more points and get a gift card. I can see updates through the news feed, and I'm impressed that my feedback was heard. In the end, the community had a fenced play area that my family and I use all the time. Connect allowed me to be heard and be involved more than ever in the community that I love.
ComNext is the next generation in community engagement and consultation. Our next technology allows us to pull all of the community consultation from websites and planning portals. All feedback will be provided back to councils live and direct. Councils who want to sign up can then engage directly using our online community events platform. We are seeking your commitment to sign up for our engagement app and support us in creating safe public spaces and places. Join us, join ComNext. Jack, you're on mute.
Mute.
Of course. Sorry. Thank you for your time and attention today. We're looking forward to your questions and your feedback.
I'll start with some questions about the platform. First, how do you spell it?
ComNext.
Thanks. And in terms of ownership or status, is it private, government? Like, how does it fit into that relationship, the tricky relationship between a private developer, the government, the community, etc.?
We see it more as like an industry body or an industry partnership in much the same way that all the state road authorities have a body that does research for them in Austroads, and like the Real Estate Agents Council exists for real estate agents. We see it as being, I guess, something that everyone contributes to for the common good of the industry.
You have two customers. If I'm thinking about this as a product, the B2C element is the interface, the front end interface you design that allows people to jump in there and take part. The B2B element is, and that's what I'm trying to work out, right? The B2B element is what exactly is the benefit that you're selling to councils?
So the benefit, I guess, is we're creating essentially a snowball effect where we have the community members and they're all signed up. They've got all of their demographic data pre-filled. So it makes it easy for the community members to contribute, but it also makes it easy for the councils and for the developers for state governments or whoever is running the project to also find people who are relevant and, you know, request their feedback. It kind of, yeah, we can carry forward that progress through different projects.
I missed it in the beginning, but does anybody in your project team here has done work or currently work with councils?
Amanda is a member of Orange City Council, and I work with the South Australian government.
So tell me a bit about what do you think about the technology systems used by different councils? And what sorry, you go.
I was just going to say the e-planning portal in New South Wales is perfect in terms of like an algorithm to automatically feed out and then feed straight into our app. So it means that we don't necessarily have every council needing to be signed up for it because the algorithm automatically pulls them all out. And then that means that councils, because they're already probably paying for a platform, they will automatically get feedback sent back to them. And then as soon as they see all the feedback and the amount of users on there, then they'll re-engage with us to do the online chats back with the feedback. So the benefit would be that we have an algorithm that then pulls from all those websites. But yes, I take your point that the councils themselves don't have the best websites to pull from, which is why e-planning and things like that helps. But I know that it doesn't cover all the different types of engagement.
Yeah. And that's spot on. That's exactly where my point was going. So I guess the question then becomes, for the councils, the problem we're solving here, is it to increase the amount of feedback they're getting to improve their planning? And that's the problem we're trying to tackle. We're not trying to fix systems. We're not trying to fix this. We're just trying to get them better information. Is that right to say?
Yeah, and I guess the way that the app is designed, it also helps with closing that loop and I guess getting the community engaged throughout every part of the process. So if councils do want to, I guess, see that like a longitudinal study of like the community's opinion over the planning process. And it also means that you can kind of have a bit of education as well. So you get some feedback and you go, okay, so here's what we're doing with that feedback. And we think that this addresses it, and then you get the opportunity. So you can kind of, because you've got this group that you're carrying through the process, you've got that opportunity there as well.
Okay, I think my 2 cents around that are councils already do their own engagement. And so essentially the solution we're saying we can help you do engagement better. Is that process going to save them money? Or if it doesn't save them money and it makes it better, what would be their business case to pay extra money for research to get your data would be the question I'd have. But then no answer needed, but just food for thought.
I can cover it if you want. Like the concept would be that they actually get the information back for free, but it's locked on how much information they get. So at a minimum, they get all the feedback prior to the consultation closing period of every single person and their feedback that they've got. And then if they want to then engage with them and ask more information or follow-up questions, then they would have to pay into that. But the concept would be build the user base first, and then councils would buy in. So essentially it would almost minimize the amount of like login, and you know how you have to log into every single different council's community platform, engagement platform separately, and there's 10 clicks. It would mean that people can do it at a click of like 1 or 2 seconds, and it's the same platform for everywhere, but we would feed it back to the councils. And then the buy-in bit is them wanting to sign up to run online forums. Yeah.
Over to you, Adam, if we got anything else of feedback.
Yeah, thanks. you could really tell I'll say choreography, but the preparation done. I think it helped enable Mateen's really direct and incisive questions because he provided a comfortable and confident overview of the overall sort of solution. I like how you pitch it as a kind of completed idea. So we have the technology. I think one part which I think that Mateen's questions exposed is it was pitched very much in terms of almost an ad. So it's not an ad, it's a pitch. So that a bit of that message is really useful. Like what you're saying, Amanda, of okay, it's easy to discover, easy to engage with, and I feel like I have a say in my community. Something in your pitch is really good like that. But I think you do need to peel it back to the overall ecosystem that you're looking to play in and the value exchanges to make it work to cover those out. In that sense, I think it's risky to talk about engagement points leading to a gift card. Just that could create more questions than answers. I'm already hacking it in my brain already. So unless that's a real key part, like if you've done the canvas and that's a big part of the value exchange, then by all means do that. I think the parts where value exchange can be really meaningful is that point of competition for both sides. So what is it that you're offering councils? Do you have a really incisive way to connect to the people who care most? Because you're doing it for 30 councils, you know how to just reach out to the local daycare centres when it's a family matter and reach out to this, the religious or supporting institutions when there's something like that. So show that competitive advantage that you can offer them, that gives what Mateen was talking about in terms of the competitive advantage. And it sounds like you had a lot of those answers, but just be ready to peel that off. So it's less about it's not pitching or selling it to your end consumer who's going to download the ComNext app. It's more selling it to the person who's going to help you build the ComNext app and the multiple value exchanges that are occurring. Back to really felt prepared and well delivered. So it was really refreshing to hear the story and how it all threaded together. And also, I'm just keen to see that video with the painting that you gave for it.
Yep, same here. Echo all of that. I think really, really good flow. The way that you were passing on to one another to tell the full story was fantastic. I really liked that you had a few taglines that were fantastic. If you love your community, but not all voices are heard, I really like that. I like the strong, punchy statement that our solution is for you, right? I like that you're really hooking onto that keys. I think the key solution that you have and the key value proposition is very, very clear. Hear more voices, or to get your voice heard, to look after your own community. And I thought that was super crisp, clear, loved it. I think in terms of to build onto Adam's point about the value exchanges, and I guess earlier on that question as well, right? A lot of this was talking about the B2C element that I have. I have these feel goods that I'm able to share and build my community. But then what is that other part of the value exchange? What's the value that we are giving to councils? I feel you mentioned it, but you scratched the surface of it, right? It's just like, oh yeah, councils can access this data, easy. But like, it would be good to at least understand that a little bit more. I'm getting the marching orders from Laura. And so I guess the last thing I'll say is I really liked the gamification part of it in terms of the points. Maybe something to think about is the value exchange is simply the fact that you can do good for your community? And do you need to really reward that gamification piece, or are there other ways that we can recognize them? One example is your name on a bench for the thing that you've provided feedback on. That's cheap, that's free, and that sort of fits into the span. So that's it from me. Well done. Yeah, thanks.
Voice of the communities, if there are no more questions, we might move on to achieving sustainable place. Lucky last.
right, Ben, let's do this.
Hi everyone. Yep, we're Group 5. We are achieving sustainable place attraction. And our question is, how might we deliver vital, active places and communities that encourage people of different ages, cohorts, culture and purpose to visit, dwell and linger? So our team is made up of engineers, architects, scientists, development managers and innovation and business specialists. We have 5 team members: Alex Frost from Sydney Water, Ali Morgan from Transport for New South Wales, Jack Holmes from Renewal South Australia, Jessica Carson from GHD and myself from John Holland. And I'll pass over to Jack, who will be presenting our pitch today.
Ben. So you can tell when a place is thriving. It's alive with activity, vitality and energy. But what metrics do we have to back that up? Could you as an owner easily point to the trends, challenges and opportunities that a place might be facing? So what if our places told us exactly how they're being used? And what if those insights helped us plan for the future? Placemakers rely on gut feel and precedent in designing places. And accessible and predictive user behavior insights are our solution for effective decision-making, long-term thinking, and a constant improvement model for places. So our business, Place Insights, offers a holistic solution for developers and local government who want to truly understand the wants, needs, and behaviors of the communities they serve. It's built on a foundation of smart Internet of Things public realm furniture. And we provide data visualization platform that combines real-time user behavior data with AI predictive insights and visualizations. We have a range of off-the-shelf smart public realm solutions that capture a comprehensive suite of environmental and behavioral data that influences and informs better design outcomes. So the Humble Bench now predicts the busiest times of day, informs the optimal trading hours of the new cafe, and can automatically evaluate the success of the latest placemaking activity. We offer our clients value add through a layering of user insights all in one place. Our partnerships in the tech space provide us access in the emerging fields of user sentiment, and our constantly expanding network of smart places gives us access to macro insights from around the country and in different markets. So we can identify trends long before they show up in the economic data. So the industry's been waiting for a readily deployable product like this with a holistic solution. And our roadmap begins with building partnerships to pilot our first generation of products, expanding the use cases for our offering, and to build a catalogue of successful projects to generate confidence in what we can deliver. And what we're asking you is to partner with us to be a part of those first pilot projects and to have your foot in the door for the sort of insights that are going to help make your places sustainable and relevant into the future. That's it. And we'll open for Q&A.
Could you give me an example of an insight that the Humble Bench could give me?
Does anyone else want to jump in with this one?
Sure. So for example, with the bench, we use that as one example in the range that we would offer. But the bench, for example, it could be having sensors within the bench to determine, how many people might sit on that bench a day, how long they're sitting for, to give insights about how people are dwelling in a place. And then also potentially, partnering with other sets of data to determine how many people are returning to that place as well.
There's a bit of a value piece there where that data is real time, captured forever, and predictive, in that you can marry up your insights from a place with the real world happenings that are going on. So a trend is occurring in a city, and you're mixing, you're able to look at how that trend has impacted your space specifically in a range of factors, not just number of people there, but are they staying, are they dwelling? So it's not like a bench is the full solution. It's really a whole space has like a holistic suite of data, and then you can look at the trends that are occurring across the city that are relevant to you and see where you sit in the picture.
So oh, sorry, you go.
I was just going to say that this solution deals with the built environment and how we can provide the Internet of Things within that, and then also tying that in with place activation strategies and events and different contextual things that might occur in that place, or different strategies that the place might be being tested in that place, but having that data there being able to be captured to be able to see what is successful, what is not, and how can we further improve that place.
So if I've heard that right, you will utilize smart IoTs, sensors, and put them on things. So in the built environment, you don't want to be involved in any way with the making of a bench or the making of a light or the making of anything. You're just going to figure out how to put sensors on things as one part of your value prop, because you want to be the data aggregator that can pull data from your own sensors, but plus other data sets that you get access to provide consulting or value-added services to these departments who do planning for these areas. Is that so far right?
That's mostly right.
Yeah.
There's not really any money or margin to be gained in being a public realm furniture provider. That isn't already out there in the market. So we might offer furniture as a whole off-the-shelf solution as a means of getting a customer, but the value and the revenue is based on having a relationship with a client where you're providing that data aggregation and insight service. The furniture is a practical means of getting it into the right places, and it's linked to where people, do activities, how they behave. That's why it makes sense in those things. But if it made sense somewhere else, we've got the same tools and technology to implement it in something else.
Cool. Thanks. Adam, any questions from you?
You mentioned kind of the industry's been waiting for this. Are there any, complete fine if there's not, but are there any sort of insights or things that really show that there are specific things that you've seen demand for in the industry around any of these data spaces?
It's pretty common in the traffic engineering space to chuck a bunch of sensors on a road and use that information to inform, capacity, number of traffic, what type of vehicles. We do often pay consultants to provide us with that sort of information about pedestrian and user behavior. And there are some technologies around, how many people come into a shop, these sorts of things, but they're pretty decentralized. And we don't see big placemaking users adopting them for an entire asset. And that's really the value here, is having a complete picture, not just one standalone data set that maybe isn't really supported by the aggregation infrastructure and a provider like us that can actually go, yeah, there's the data, but here's the insight. Here's the bit that actually matters to your business or your place. And here's the trend that's happening in all the capital cities, and this is why your space is similar, and this is why it's different.
Thanks.
Do you want to go ahead, Adam, or should I jump in first?
Go for it, Mateen.
All right, thanks. All right, so in terms of feedback, I think clearly a very well-rehearsed and planned pitch, so good job. I think I really liked the initial "how might we" statement. I really like how you opened it. What metrics do we actually have to measure vitality? What if our place could tell us how they felt and needed and what they, I think that was fantastic, right? You turned a place into almost like a persona and saying that places need things, and and you just need to hear how they can tell us what they need. I really, really liked that. Now, as we move on through it, I like the off-the-shelf solution. That's a very good way to position something that doesn't need heavy customization and all of that. So now where I think where we can sharpen or improve some of your pitch is, in the data space, it's always very easy to say, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we had this data? And it just makes logical sense. Oh yeah, we should have that and we should analyze that. But then it becomes very tricky to actually try to quantify what is the benefit of getting that data and what we can actually do with it. Now, I think one thing that you answered to or alluded to in the questions was they do this in road networks. They have a ton of sensors everywhere and allows them to do better road planning. Why doesn't this happen in placemaking? I think there's data you can find out that it says by being able to introduce data into a lot of this, we've been able to improve road efficiencies and networks by X number. Huge missing stat for placemaking, right? And so I think that's one way you can shape up the beginning piece of your pitch. I think where it gets a little bit confusing for me is, do you make the IoT sensors and then do the data analysis of value add? Or do you also make benches? I'm still really not clear. And I think make the sensors, put them on things, analyze data. That's where the play is. Making furniture, somebody else does that. Somebody else does better, right? The success on your pitch is how many things can you get your sensors on? And that's going to give you the richness of your data. Plus, talking about some of the additional data sets you could pair it with. Is there anonymized credit card data that can help you track people's movement? Is there anonymous phone information that you can use to see how people flow through spaces, right? Can you use public cameras to do that as well? So you mentioned some of these secondary data sources. Just mentioning a few of them will add a little bit more credence to the way that you've thought about this as well. I like that your approach. Partner first, few very sharp use cases, and then expand it. And between the few of you all, if you can brainstorm what one of these initial use cases could be, that would be another way to bring your solution to life. But I think overall, fantastic job. The last pack of feedback I've got is your main customer. Is it going to be people who are operating the built environment? Because the majority or the best benefit your product could offer are designers working in the pre-built environment, figuring out how to make it better. And so which is sort of the customer group that you're targeting, or is it both? But that's it from me. On to you, Adam.
Thanks. Yeah, well done. That was really compelling, got our attention. The narrative matched the picture as well. I was kind of waiting for the slides to be removed or changed, though.
We didn't have a slideshow prepared. We just had one picture.
And that's
just
fine.
setting the tone.
But then get rid of it and show us your face, because that captured it, and it was a really good picture for you can tell when a place is thriving. And the fact that both Mateen and I could like verbatim quote you on that means that was a really, really good thing. And what if our places told us that how they're being used? Really good way of having us embrace the problem area without saying the how might we, but actually having us kind of feel the problem as well. Then it is that solution. So my note, which sounds very familiar, is can you tell one more complete story? And in the conversation afterwards, Jess, you talked about activation strategies. So that would be a really, really cool story to tell. And if you're talking about partnerships, try to paint that picture of, you're talking local cafe partnership to get their data. One I was thinking was waste. And that could be a double, like by seeing how often the trash can's used, you know how busy the place is, but also you could do the reverse and tell council, hey, I've got overflowing rubbish here, whatever it is. But trying to paint that complete picture. I suppose I was also curious in terms of, is there the opportunity to install this into a thriving place to get the models to then, the aspirational thriving space can learn from it to see, okay, here's what a really good activation looks like. And yeah, whether is that the analogy of the road traffic or something else, trying to see that, because I think one aspect of activation is it really, I don't want to say pivots, but it can often reimagine the use of a space. So whether it's like a laneways festival or something like that, and that suddenly starts to challenge the IoT you have, because if it's meant to measure, a normal use, and all of a sudden we've got a music festival there, or we've got pop-up food carts, then all of a sudden the data does shift dramatically. And is that your value proposition, or is the fact that, that you have a really good eye to sensors means it adapts to that. I'm not sure. That could be a distraction, sorry, but I was just better of seeing.
I think that's part of it.
Picture.
No, that makes total sense. I think the layering of events and unforeseen or maybe planned activities is part of it, and you need enough of a baseline of data to then be able to go, well, this is how the space is different when it's in planned activity mode, and that can inform lots of things like crowding. How much more do businesses need to cater for? How many more people is it in real numbers? Is it worth doing it? Is it worth council investing this money to host this event? How many more people does it actually bring? That sort of stuff.
That's cool.
We want to, I suppose, try and find the really core one of those that we can slip in there and keep it under 2 minutes and make sure people really get that. Not all of the use cases are worked out, but there's definitely some fairly straightforward, compelling ones already there.
I might have mentioned it briefly to this team before, or maybe I just bored Ali with it, but I think that for me is getting to some of the core problem, which also Mateen touched on, of who the customer is. And I use art as the extreme. So we invest $500,000 in getting a brand new sculpture in the middle of some public area. How do you know if it's worth it or not? What data do you have? Like, that's the most extreme case for me, because it's so extravagant. You can't, if you decide to provide a grant for outdoor seating, I could make an Excel spreadsheet today that says, okay, if I invest in outdoor seating, we can charge an extra council rate. They get more bodies through. We hit parking fines and we'll make some money out of it, whatever it is. Whereas art is a real extreme one that says, well, how could you determine it's worthwhile investing $500,000 in a sculpture to do that? I think one of the challenges there is not just is it worth it or not, but who would pay for that insight that tells them that it's worth doing that or not. And maybe it is something, if I use that bad idea, the sculptures by the sea or Vivid or something like that are really extreme cases of that. Would the data tell them anything useful or not? But that would then enable, so we've got the idea of you can tell when a place is thriving, but just, again, I suppose a value exchange to say, okay, here's someone who'd be willing to pay to get the insights that says that this activity and actually having not just a utility of benches and public toilets and, elevator to the nearest train station, but actually a place for community is worth doing.
Yep.
Cool.
Thank you both for that feedback.
All right, guys. Thank you so much, judges, for your detailed feedback to each team. Apologies, I have to kind of crack the whip just in the interest of time, because I know that some of our judges have places to be, and we've promised them a time to go. So judges, if you guys have 15 minutes or 10 minutes up your sleeve, it would be great to get your feedback just of the overall comments of how you guys experienced each pitch, any sort of last tips of feedback that you can provide to everyone, since we've got them in the room. And guys, feel free to put your cameras back on now, because, we get a bit lonely talking to some black screens. Audience and guys, if you guys have any questions for Mateen and Adam just before they drop off, obviously judges, if you're welcome to stay the rest of the workshop, but if you guys have to drop off after this, completely understand.
First of all, well done. It's not easy. It's also kind of not fair. We don't get this shared, let's say, tension and excitement that would come if we're all in person. You all kind of get a little sample of that yourself in front of your own cameras. But we are feeling it too. So well done. Like, you've got the excitement that you guys have and the challenges and struggles you've had with each of those. I think this is a great experience. So I'd imagine if we just doubled on and tomorrow did the same thing, we'd see huge, like, without even ignoring our feedback, we'd see a huge step up in that messaging, just because you had the chance to sit in front of camera, kind of say something and go, oh, that didn't really land maybe there's a better way to say that. So I'd encourage us to take some notes and reflect on that. I got to understand every problem. I got to understand where you're focusing. I could understand the core part of the solutions. So on that kind of general note, well done for each of you. It's really fun to see the variety of introductions. One which I didn't call out before, but voice of communities. I love the way you just said we're 5 people who are obsessed with community engagement excellence. That, like, yes, say who you are. It's really nice to have credentials. It actually does give momentum to your presentation, and I could hear that in all the presentations, a bit of just introducing to say, hey, we know what we're talking about, we've done some work here. But I'd like that common thread too, just to say, hey, here's why we're here. We really care about how we engage our communities. And I know it's really hard to prioritize 2 minutes, and trying to find at least some sort of well-crafted story in that does make a big difference, because it gives you something to connect to. And I think you all have that, because you're trying to give young people a home. You're trying to make sure, you know, our nans and pops aren't left behind with technological change. We're trying to almost personify a physical space. So there's, and again, we're just creating a foundation for resilience. There's a clear meaning behind each of those. So it's already there, but just trying to create that simple story to engage with makes a huge difference.
From me, well done, everyone. I think it was so fantastic being able to listen to the variety of ideas and also the variety of ways that they got pitched back to Adam and myself. I think there's, I guess, a few last parting words before we close off is, we saw 6 pitches, learned from each of them, right? Each of them had things they did better than others, and each of them had things that they didn't do as good as others, right? So learn from each of the pitches that you've seen. So to Adam's point, just being in the room and seeing how other people have done it is already really good to improve your pitch, even without our feedback. I think some of the feedback I have is a few ones of them, right? So one is, explain everything you're doing in as plain a language as possible. I think one of the biggest challenges I found in running through similar projects in the past, and it's a whirlwind for us, right? For everybody taking part in this, it's so much to do in so little time. We get so attached to the problem, we think that we need to use bigger words or say more things about it to really tell people everything that we've been through. But we don't need to trauma dump on the audience, right? We really just need to get them to understand what the key things are we're trying to say in the simplest way possible. And the very clear structure is simply, what's the problem you're fixing? What's the benefit? What's the solution? Keep it very, very sharp into those key areas you're trying to work out. The second point I'd make is, in terms of the time you have to make your pitch, some teams went over, some teams went under. To me, they're both equally bad. If you go over and under, the sweet spot is 2 minutes, because that is the amount of time you have. So use all of it when you can. But other than that, that's to me the general level of feedback I'll pass through. Well done, everybody. It was super exciting to see you all. And I'm so excited to see where this, what we land up in the final pitch. And Rads, will Adam and I have a chance to take a look at that as well?
Yes, you guys, will invite you guys to the final pitches. So you guys will be able to see how it all sort of transforms.
Fantastic. And to the rest of the room, does anybody have questions for Adam and myself?
You did a really good job, I'll say that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think
if anyone has, oh, sorry, was someone about to jump in?
I was going to just offer a really quick observation. Definitely take, you know, we went a bit interrogation at times. That's really good feedback, because it means you've done enough to have us connect with, understand, not all your idea clearly, we had questions, but to be able to engage with your idea, to say, hang on a second, what about this, what about that? So, and some of them might be distracting questions, take them and use them to determine, okay, we need to skip that whole topic altogether because it triggered questions we don't want to cover now, or okay, if we just reframe this sentence, we'll avoid that question next time. But in any case, I think that is really good evidence. that says, okay, we got enough to understand your problem, to understand the context you're operating in, and that there's something there worth following, which is why you want to understand more about it. So it's okay. That was just a quick note.
No, that's super useful. I was just wanting to ask, in terms of, like, from your experience, both you and Mateen, in terms of, is this similar to, or kind of what's the transferable experience to actually pitching something within your organization, being a new idea or something that you and your role have been working on, and you need to present it maybe not to a panel of investors or judges, but to your own managers or executives? Is this a pretty similar process?
I think, yeah, it's a similar process in the sense we would run through what's the problem we're trying to fix here, do the research, really do your homework to figure out who your key audience is, what's your value proposition. So in general, yes, the process is similar, but there are also other elements where we've not gone through in this session, just purely because of the amount of time and resources we have to do them. But other things we would also tend to consider when we're looking at innovation management of ideas and bringing things through the idea life cycle. You're very much focused on desirability. So do people want it? And it's very clear to me that that's been the main exam question you've had to answer. There are two other parts of this, which are the viability and feasibility of bringing an idea through. And there's also, depending on who manages the innovation lifecycle, I tend to like to also think about commerciality quite early. And there are some people who prefer to think about the dollars later, but I always find that thinking about the dollars at a high level earlier allows us to consider it before we go through all the innovation lifecycle before dropping out at the end because we haven't thought about the dollars. And so I think, yes, by a whole, similar, but then there are other parts that we would look at.
I think that on top of that, the biggest influencing factor that I'd see that impacts this message is what that ask is at the end. And I would say I'm not too clear. I'm not sure. I get the impression that this team is not too clear on what that ask is, because you're not sure when you finish what happens with this. And the main scenarios that I've seen unfold is you have a business case. That is, we've learned enough that with $200,000, we can go ahead and deploy this app in this environment. We get these benefits. So can I get your money to assemble a team to do that? I doubt that's the case here. It's more of we've learned enough to know we've got a lot more to learn. And so that if we do want some sort of support, the case is we want to investigate more. And it can feel a bit strange to have that as your ask, because it feels like we've got lots of questions, but with your help, we can have even more questions. But that does feel like that's where it's at. And I have seen that because it helps frame it as, look, we don't have success yet. We're not promising you that, we'll get to Series C round funding in the next few months or whatever it is. It's more of okay, we feel this is a problem worth solving. And the logical next step to take is to invest more time, effort, money in better understanding and exploring that problem. In which case, this is very close to what our transport innovation pipeline looks at, where what they actually get is a mix of funding, so relatively small sort of funding seed, but then also sort of that high level executive support to say, okay, yeah, let's try and mount bike racks on the front of buses to see if that helps our multimodal strategic plans to enable people to get from A to B better. And yes, there's funding to actually do the bike rack, but there's also the audience to pursue that to the next level. So the success is simply that we've tested the idea further. A long answer, but it really depends on what the ask is that determines is this a suitable format. I would assume the ask is this idea worth pursuing further with the right people involved to actually get us the right answers?
Thanks for that. That's really good. And also just seeing you break it up in terms of the ask might just be to progress to the next stage of investigation. And when I can relate to that in terms of when you're asking for things internally to your organization, it might actually be understanding, okay, let's scope out together what comes next versus saying, hey, I've got everything mapped out, you just need to sign here and we can go ahead. You know, sometimes the dynamic might be different for internal asks.
Mateen and Adam, thank you so much for your time today. I know I've learned a lot by just listening, so I hope everyone has learned and gained something from having these two wonderful people in the room this afternoon. This does sort of conclude your segment of the workshop, so if you do feel like you want to go, please feel free. We're now going to go on a short 5-minute break, guys, for you guys to get a cup of tea. And we're going to be using the second half of the segment just for you guys to know, Adam and Mateen, to just, the team's going to use this time to really just refine their feedback. So if you guys want to sort of be a fly on the wall or an active facilitator in those sessions so that participants can ask you questions as they're iterating, please feel free. But as a formal sort of coach, this is where it ends for you guys. I will put a timer, guys. Be back in 5, caffeinated or teed up. And yeah, thank you so much for contributing, guys. Pitching is not easy.
Thanks all.
Well done, everyone.
Well done.
Thanks.
I always try to tempt fate these with these breaks, and I go, no, Rads, you can't eat a whole packet of chips in 5 minutes, despite how hard you try. So I'm back. So obviously, firstly, congratulations on pitching. I just want to say from experience, I have run pitching training many times, but on the sidelines, Kay has had to yell at me to pitch myself in the accelerator that I'm in, because pitching is optional. And there are so many fears that I have, or that anyone can have when they pitch, because, you know, you're like, is there any gap in my information? Do I want to make sure this is right? And I actually didn't end up pitching out of just like fear paralysis. So the fact that you guys pitched and you're like, you know what, particularly climate resilience, like ballsy, like I don't think I could have gone up and pitched, and you're like, you know what, it's not done yet, but we're going to give it a go. And that is exactly what this program encapsulates. And I'm just, as a facilitator, I'm just really proud that everyone has taken that plunge to pitch, because it is not an easy task. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So if there's any advice that I could give you guys between now and pitching, particularly taking back the incredible feedback of the coaches, but also just continuously practicing. If it's like practicing on your housemates, practicing on your kids, practicing people in the elevator, like whoever, whenever, however, it just really finesses the gaps or things. You'll start to self-identify things. You won't even need someone else to start to identify sort of what you need to do to make your pitch more robust. But incredible work, each and every one of you. It is not an easy task at all. So what we have planned for the rest of this workshop is, naturally, it has been a quite a heavy session in terms of feedback and in terms of listening and presenting. It can take a lot out of you. So we thought that as a first stop, I will hand the two things. The first thing is I'll hand some time over to Kay, who's going to just iron out some of the specificities and questions people had around InspireWorks. I see some teams have sort of started to fill in the script already, but if you guys have any questions or sort of what exactly InspireWork is going to do in that document or how to fill it out, I'm going to hand the baton quickly over to Kay. But secondly, we're going to use the sort of final 10 minutes if we have time in the session, but we're running out of time, so it might be homework. If we don't have time after Kay kind of goes through InspireWorks, your homework will obviously to be implement the feedback that you guys have gotten given. Spend some time with your teams outside of this space to come together and sort of deconstruct the feedback you've been given and sort of start to iterate your pitches accordingly. Before I hand over to Kay, just quickly, if I could get some feedback from you guys, how did you guys find that? Like, what was the experience like? yeah, how are you guys feeling?
Good. I think it went well. It was really good to lay out the pitch as like, all right, this is like a proper pitch now, and then get like feedback of like, oh, these are some of the questions that we might be asked, or some of the problems that are with our solution, and like, all right, how can we incorporate those into our thing and go from there, which we'll do in our groups in a minute. Yeah.
Thanks, Isaac. Anyone else? Don't make me pick on you.
I think it was good, and also being able to see other groups as well and how they've solved their problems and structured their problems, structured their presentation. Sorry, that was really useful. And then just to, the preparation in the lead up to this, we ironed out a lot of issues that we'd been seeing with our presentation as well. So yeah, really great process to go through before the proper pitch.
Thanks so much, Jess. Anyone else like to share their final thoughts of how they found the process? Alrighty then. Well, I might, in that case, hand over to Kay, who will talk briefly about sort of what you guys need to prep for InspireWorks, and then we'll see how much time we have left.
Yeah, because we've only got 10, thanks, Brad. So we've only got 10 minutes. So I feel like we won't be able to give too much time back to the teams during this workshop for you to deconstruct, but it sounds like you guys are doing it kind of in the background anyway. That was good. And it was definitely, because Rads and I went through all your storyboards and was able to give feedback. It was really good to see how you guys had taken that on kind of in terms of written feedback, and then also seeing just a completely fresh person come in, grasp the complexity of both your problem as well as your solution in 2 minutes, and really see if they've brought on to essentially whatever you have developed as your solution. So for those who could listen to the other pitches as we went through this practice, it actually is quite intense to really focus on what's happening with all the other pitches. And so kind of one other thing that helps with your pitch practice is to record yourself and then listen to yourself and see what you might pick up if you're watching yourself versus just running through it, because there's definitely like nervous tics that I know I have when I speak, or kind of when you realize you need to slow down or need to kind of speed up your talking. But the good thing is you'll be doing voiceovers for your videos so that you actually can record yourself, listen back, re-record if you really wanted to. I know some of you may have started with your script, so I will, but I'll go through it anyway, just in terms of answering some questions about the stock footage. What kind of footage can we use? How much detail we need to put into the script, what it looks like in terms of getting the video back, etc. So please, if you haven't already, look at the email, I think entitled InspireWorks video production, that has step-by-step instructions of how to essentially provide your information over to InspireWorks to create the video. They won't be looking at your storyboard blocks that's in your mural board. They'll only be working in the Word document that's provided to you in that email. So it's a Word document in the email, and what you want is only one copy in the Dropbox folder by June 30th, so they know which version. If possible, if you can all sign up for Dropbox, that would be great. Otherwise, throw it on Google Sheets so you guys can collaborate on it and kind of fill it out, or designate 1 or 2 people to fill it out, and then throw the final version into your own team's Dropbox folder will be really quite handy. I'm just going to share my screen. Go. Okay, so in terms of some how to fill it out, and some teams, they have a fair amount of detail in their kind of working board, in the storyboard. You will really need to be very clear, very succinct and very selective when you come to creating your script, because you as we found today, most people, when they're talking through it, most teams might go over the 2-minute mark. So this is an example of the, this is what this, oh, maybe not. This is what the kind of script looks like, where you've got two columns, stuff you see and then stuff you hear. So I filled it out in terms of a completely made up problem, a completely made up solution. But just to give you guys an idea of how much detail you want to put in here. So in the audio side, you do want to be able to put your voiceover script, or put down what the audio file name is. For example, if you've got audio kind of take 1 dot MP4, for example, whatever it is. If it's the full audio from one person, if you're like, okay, I want 10 seconds, so from 0, 0, 0 to 0, 10 seconds, to say, okay, I want the first 10 seconds out of this audio, and then in the next one, we're going to take it from 10 to 20 seconds. So this just gives the InspireWorks kind of enough to know, okay, this is where it changes from scene to scene about the audio. Putting what you're actually saying in there is helpful, because we will be putting a captions when we come to the final set of videos, just so when it comes to showcase, people can listen to you as well as read the captions as well. That's quite helpful. On the vision side, so you can see that it's more of a description. There is a description of what you want to appear, plus either footage or the kind of stock video outlining what you want to appear. This is an example of an animation to say, hey, you know, I want this to happen. I want this in one scene that kind of transitions to another scene. So you can write that in here. In the second scene, for example, there you want an animation of a couple of things to show up as the voiceover is happening. So for example, you want to show an animated picture of a person or a photo of a person, and then as you talk, you're talking about we're saving 500,000 tons of carbon emissions per person, and then you want the dollar sign to show up. And we're also saving, you know, $200,000 in government funds, etc., and vice versa. You want the carbon emissions animation to show up during that, and that's kind of how you can tell InspireWorks what you want to show up as you're talking through it. Picking footage. So it's not recommended that you go into Google Images and find kind of a video or a YouTube, a video or a photo of what you're looking for. It's not, I suppose, the end of the world, because this is going to be you're not using it for commercial purposes, but there are copyright issues around using it, because you haven't asked the owner for permission, you're going to be reusing their video in a public forum, etc. So it's best to use the stock footage options provided by InspireWorks. So here they've got a place where you can search up stock footage, and the helpful part of your team searching for the footage you want is you can be really specific and say, okay, I found the one that really shows, you know, the community that we want to show. It's got the right diversity, or it's got the specific kind of profile of people that we want to show. Whereas you can ask InspireWorks for help to find that, but they might give you some options and you might say, okay, it's none of that. So you might end up looking at the stock video site yourself anyway. So this is what it looks like. So for example, once you log in with those details, be quite specific. So I was trying to look for bus waiting in Australia. Also note that because it's going to be worldwide footage, try to look for Australia in your search term, and so then you won't get you know, other countries, things that really make it obvious that it's from other countries. So this one kind of might be generic enough. Some people might go, oh, you know, that's a US bus. If it's kind of okay for you to just showcase what you want, it might be fine to use. If you're feeling like, oh, you know, I really need it to show Indigenous Australians, for example, be more specific in your search terms. So for example, I've picked, let's go this one. This just looks like a busy road full of traffic that I want to use, or the serious woman waiting for the bus. Actually, that would have been a good one. Either way, what you can do is you have the rights to download the file types. Do it in HD. There's really no need to do it in 4K until you get funding. Then you can definitely go nuts. Download it and then drop it into the visuals folder in your Teams Dropbox folder, as well as noting in your script. For example, under here, you've got, what is it called? Moscow, June 19, whatever the file name ends up being called, just drop that into your template as well. .mp4 to let InspireWorks know, hey, this is what we've chosen. Please use that in the background. And of course, you can also have text that shows up on top of footage, for example. So if you want a really nice quote or you've got statistics, you can also say 100,000 people are delayed by kind of bus strikes, whatever it is. And you want that text on screen to show up. So that's the kind of detail where you should have it. But as you can see, once you start kind of pulling it all together and working out how many seconds each scene will take, and some scenes might only be a couple of seconds long or 10 seconds long, and you string a few of them together, versus another one which you've got a lot of description that you want to include. You've got a couple of different visuals that you want to have happen one after the other. They might all form one scene if that helps you break it down, for example. And then you'll see, okay, there's only so much that we can fit in time-wise. And you can also know, kind of pick a couple of different footage shots and say, quickly scroll through these to kind of essentially create context or background or emotion. That pretty much is it. The last kind of pointer is around your voiceovers. So you can use your phone to record your own voiceovers and kind of download that file. You might make sure you're in a room, an environment that's quiet. Unfortunately, I only have kind of this room in my home to work in, and I know it's quite echoey. It's actually not the best for recording voiceovers. Isaac, I can see you normally are in kind of one of those telephone pods or meeting pods that have a felted wall covering. Those are actually really good because they are soundproof in a way that the felted carpet walls stop sound waves from bouncing back and forth between the walls or the windows. So if you can find a kind of quiet spot that also doesn't have a lot of echo. Once when I just had to do some quick voiceovers and I couldn't do anything else, I just had to put a towel over my head and do a short recording. But yeah, I know, not great, but do those. You can take a couple of takes if you want, and then upload into your folders and just note down, you know, which file type for InspireWorks to do. And note that we've come up to 3 o'clock. Congrats, you guys. You are almost able to hand off kind of your narrative into video production. Deadline is 4 p.m. by June 30th. So please make sure everything that you want InspireWorks to look at is in there, and you will get your video back for review on July the 5th, which gives you a couple of weeks then to work with InspireWorks and make the final adjustments. Thanks, Rats.
All right, guys, we are at time, so I won't take any more time of your afternoon. So everyone have a great afternoon. If you need us, like a couple of you have reached out over the past week, just feel free to call us or book some time in by emailing us, and we're happy to review or do a sort of final walkthrough of your pitches if need be. So just reach out to us if you guys need. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys, for this week.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
See you later, guys.